Good morning. It's July 15th, 2022, Friday, the last Friday of this year's Calgary Stampede. The last time I'll get away with wearing this Western getup to get out of wearing a necktie. I'll have to throttle myself again on Monday, but that's just the way it goes, I guess. Got to find a middle ground. I'd be wearing a t-shirt if I could get away with it. Somewhere in middle ground between Derek and his necktie thing and me and my t-shirts. Maybe we could get a compromise, but we'll get there one day. All right. So, yes. This is the last day of the Stampede. We got a lot to cover today. I got some good guests. I see some folks in the comments already, Ashley and Jet, others. And I see Claudette mentioned she couldn't get on YouTube yesterday. I'm not sure. They did have some issues with other YouTube was having some problems, I think, in certain parts of the world and things, and maybe it was a bit domestic as well. But it seems to be working for now. Again, I'd like to remind people we did get kicked off YouTube for a while, and it'll probably end up happening again. Hope not. We're going to try and avoid it, but keep in mind Rumble and Facebook. I know not everybody's big on Facebook, but at least that one seems to be allowing things, and it's good for the comment scroll. Rumble works great, but it's hard on comments for us to get back to. Colleen saying, my shirt hurts the eyes. Paisley must never return to the closets. Well, I got something loud, like I said, so you can't see the stains on it or anything like that as it might happen. Let's look at the observations for today. What's important? What's going on? What have you got to know as the day gets rolling? Well, it is International Be a Dork Day. This is one that I find easy to participate in. It's not terribly hard. I just have to be myself. I mean, look at me cosplaying a cowboy today, for example. And I'm just going to block a spammer here real quick. And yes, so dorks can block spammers. And yeah, this is the day that the geeks and wieners and nerds and whatever term we had for them should be recognized, and you should get out there and be one yourself. Things have changed quite a bit. I mean, they have made being a dork somewhat cool. I mean, that Big Bang Theory and shows like that have sort of normalized dorkery for those out there. So enjoy that today. It's also National Pet Fire Safety Day. This one's a little more serious, but as people who follow this show know, I love animals. I love them much more than people typically. And today's the day to keep in mind. It is the Pet Fire Safety Day. If you've got pets in your home, things like that, you can get stickers or you can even make your own, get them on the door. Let's just say in case you aren't home, there's a fire in your place. If there's a note, at least letting the first responders know that you have, one cat, 2 dogs in the place, assuming they're not going to be putting themselves at risk. You understand priorities, but they'll make sure to have a closer look in the house and get the pet out of there so that at least you might lose your home, but you can keep your furry friends there. It's just something to keep in mind. My place, we got a doggy door. My goofy dogs could run back out into the yard in the woods and escape if the house burned, but we'll try and avoid that in the first place. And along with that, with pets, now's the season where we start hearing the stories and we start seeing it with imbeciles who leave them in hot vehicles with the windows rolled up. Even with them rolled down a little, we're hitting 30 degrees. Dogs can't take that heat. It kills them. We hear about it all the time, particularly dogs like bulldogs and flat-faced ones, but all of them, they can't manage that. So, folks, if you see a parking lot and a dog's dying in there, don't hesitate for a second. Smash the window out. Maybe smash them all just to be on the safe side. Get that dog out of there. Save that poor critter. And, if you end up getting financial repercussions or problems, hey, let me know. We'll certainly start a fundraiser to make sure your bills are covered. And we can also further shame the individual who tortured an animal by leaving it in a hot car that they themselves certainly wouldn't sit in. Come on, people, just be a little more responsible. I know people get wound up now and then. Oh, why do you care more about animals than people? And I wouldn't say, I guess, overall. But the thing is, when it comes to animals and children, that's why people get enraged with these stories when we see abuse of those things, because we get most upset with abuse against people or animals that can't defend themselves. They can't take care of themselves. It's on us, So, I mean, yes, an animal can nip back, but really, they're dependent on us. We have a responsibility. Likewise with children, of course, a person can really harm a child. A child's incapable of defending themselves. That's why we get so much more upset when we see neglect or cruelty impacting animals and children than we do with other people on. And as Jet pointing out that one, the car window sign is saying the air conditioning is on, he has water and such. Yes, and that's fine if you're really going to do that, but not too many people will. And unfortunately, some. Giesbrecht on again, and we're going to talk some more about Indian residential schools because he wrote a column and got a bunch of pushback and abuse about it. And the story is so big, we need to keep talking about it. We need to talk about more. And we put a piece up actually last night by Jaime Rubenstein. You can see it on the westernstandard.news. It's been very well read because there's some very serious questions being asked about the residential school grave sites. And there's a lot of stuff that's unresolved, and discussion is being shouted down. We have to talk about these things. We got to look at what's going on out there and get to the facts. You know, they always talk, we want resolution, we want resolution. Well, I agree. So let's investigate, dig a hole, and find out what's really going on. So we'll talk to Mr. Giesbrecht about that. Then I'm going to have Maxime Bernier. He's going to be in studio today. He's coming in person. We'll talk about that. Of course, he's out for the Stampede. The politicians never avoid Calgary during the Stampede. We'll see what's going on with the People's Party of Canada and Mr. Bernier's plans and his critiques, of course, for the government and perhaps the Conservative Party itself. We're going to try a little experiment later as well. Right towards the end of the show. Oh, yeah, Melanie's going to be checking in from the Stampede again, by the way. She's got sounds like a rodeo rider out there, a bronco rider, a young fella. She's going to be talking with him from the Midway. And towards the end of the show, we're going to try a call-in feature. It's going to be through Zoom. We'll send the link and things for those of you who were on for the whole show. Keep it in mind, I might just do one or two. It's kind of a test run, and we'll see if we can get some full interactivity at the end of the show and talk one-on-one to one or two of you guys to end the show. So if you got thoughts, you want to come on, you want to chat, we'll have a link for that a little later. We'll give it a crack. Don't be too disappointed if it doesn't work. Hey, I'm not trying to knock Nico's technical abilities. It's just the first time we're trying it, though, and sometimes you get tech things. But it should work great, and we can have some chat. And that'll change things altogether if we get the show a lot better to have that true one-on-one interactivity. Okay, I'll get on to my rant. I'm really babbling today, and I know Eva's waiting for the news update. So one of my terms, I like using for people to distract things. Hey, look, squirrel. And that's going on right now. That's what the legacy media is shouting as what should be a scandal making headlines across the province is sliding under the radar. We got pundits and columnists focusing on potential infighting with the UCP and talking about how some of the candidates they feel are extreme, and they're pouring fire, onto the divisions going on within their leadership race. The NDP are skating on what could be a criminal offense committed by one of their MLAs in a vile, politically motivated effort to access the personal health records of Jason Kenney. Yeah, you're not hearing a lot about this. It's out there, but you're not a lot. And giving credit where it's due, the state broadcaster, our CBC, the Mother Corp, dug into the court records and found some pretty damning evidence on the alleged hacking efforts of NDP MLA Thomas Dang. Dang has admitted that he was trying to hack the Alberta health records because he wanted to test the system, he says. He'd heard there might be vulnerabilities and felt it was his civic duty to test it out for the safety of Albertans. To be blunt, that's a load of crap. Court documents indicate Dang's efforts were focused in on Premier Kenney. It's not a coincidence. He was using Kenney's birthday and other information in hopes of finding out Kenney's vaccination status through using brute force hacking programs. He spent 4 days trying, and he wasn't as good a hacker as he thought he was because now he's facing charges. Now, clearly, what Dang was likely hoping to find anyways was evidence that Kenney wasn't vaccinated. In that case, one can presume he would leak the information and hopefully start a scandal that would harm the UCP. I suspect if Dang had managed to crack into the system, he would have moved on to other UCP MLAs too, and who knows, other public figures to try and find out who's vaccinated and who's not and shame them, because the NDP were constantly demanding who's vaccinated, who's vaccinated, who's vaccinated. Well, they feel that they had the right to, at least Mr. Dang felt he had the right to go in and try and find that out. Now, the alleged acts of Dang are scandal enough. The potentially explosive part of this story, though, revolves around who knew what and when. Court documents indicate Dang had notified the NDP Chief of Staff, Jeremy Nollet, and NDP Director of Communications, Benjamin Aldrit, about his findings. And these are top staffers within the NDP. Did he report to them because the party had sanctioned his efforts? Did they know he was trying to hack private information to citizens while he was doing it, or did they only know afterwards? Did Rachel Notley know? That's the big question. Nollet and Aldrit are her main advisors. Did an opposition party purposely support efforts to violate the medical privacy of citizens? If they didn't know Dang was doing it, did they immediately condemn him and report it to the police as soon as he told them about it? Aldrit sent an email to Alberta Health Communications Director Steve Buick, I guess, claiming a party, just in quotes, had tipped him off to a potential breach. Now, he already knew it was Dang, but he neglected to mention that. It was just a party. Now, Dang's going to be going to court at the end of this month. Perhaps we'll get more clarity on what happened and it'll be revealed then. Right now, there's some serious questions hanging out there, and we may never hear the answers to them. This incident could warrant a public inquiry. We aren't going to get one, though. because the mainstream media is too busy complaining about Theron Fleury's appearance at a Daniel Smith rally. Now, that's what's got me going on right now, guys. That's why we need alternative media, and we need people with the courage to get in on the real issues and talk about them. So let's bring somebody in on that, and that's reporter Eva Sidik coming from the newsroom with the updates for today. Hey, Eva, what's going on out there?
We got a breaking story on your rant topic for today on NDP leader Rachel Notley knowing about Dang's violations and his hacking attempt. So people can go and read more about that, and I'm sure that they will love your insights that you're providing today and what you can tell them kind of what this means.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's up on the standard site up front there, I think.
We have a new story on Conservative candidate Leslyn Lewis has taken a stance supporting the Dutch farmer protest and said that Canada is following the same destructive path to farming, especially with the Liberal net zero policy commitments that want to completely decarbonize the entire food supply chain. Our reporter Amanda Brown dug into a story yesterday on a vaccine-injured Ontario woman who has come forward describing her frustrating experience. She was randomly selected for COVID testing for the third time during traveling and COVID travel, third time being randomly selected. And she was coming back into Canada last month. Her story involves an at-home COVID test kit that was missing components, being told she had a positive test result, and then later being told that her test was damaged and inconclusive. So her incorrect test result postponed medical treatments and caused undue hardship for her family. You can read more about that on the website. We have another one about when the Freedom Convoy rolled through Ottawa this winter, a huge government compensation fund was budgeted for businesses claiming economic damage. A few compensation funds were made. One only saw 82% of the grant money go unclaimed, while another one gave away only 43% of the fund. Of almost 2,000 eligible businesses, Ottawa approved 1,127 applications and gave out only $8.6 million of the $20 million that were budgeted for this cause. We have a few Alberta stories up as well. A Lethbridge hostage incident yesterday ended with an injured captive and a suspect in handcuffs. We are awaiting more information there from police. And our newest reporter, Jonathan Bradley, wrote up a story on the Danielle Smith rally that was held in Calgary last night and asked some very compelling questions that received applause from the crowd. Go check out his story and the video to see what that's all about. And that's what we got going in the newsroom. There will be more coming out today from everyone here. Amanda's working on a few things and Mel as well.
Right on. Yeah, it's a sparse one. I know folks are escaping to the Stampede and doing some other things, but there's still plenty going on out there, and you guys are hammering away making sure it comes up. So I appreciate the updates and look forward to seeing the stuff breaking as it comes.
Yeah, I'll let you know, Cory.
Great, thanks. Okay, that's our Eva Sidik. I didn't even abuse her or bug her, as Dave always tells me to do when she comes on for those updates. I'll be nice. It's Friday. Let's get through the week here. But yes, there is lots going on out there. Eva is reporting on a lot and writing, as is Amanda and Mel. And it's hard to list them all. Jonathan Bradley is new out here in Calgary, and he's been working hard. And yeah, he went out to Smith's rally the other day, as Eva said. Got a question in out there. And yes, we have a lot of news going on. Now, to make sure you can keep accessing that, like I said, that Jaime Rubenstein piece, that's really worth reading as well. And that's under the columns, the opinion section, but it's full of facts and full of a lot of breaking things on the Indian residential schools, particularly in Kamloops. You have to have a membership, though. And if you haven't, subscribed already, hey, get on there. $10 a month, $99 for a year, less than a newspaper subscription, and you get full access to all these stories as they break. We're covering stuff the legacy media won't. As I said, we're going to hammer on, as George Nelson saying, yeah, we're not going to let it wither on the vine with this NDP Thomas Dang thing. We're going to find out what the hell happened there, because this is important. This is privacy. This is medical records. Was this just one idiot, or was there actually a party effort to try and hack into the records of elected members of the legislature? We'll report that, even if the mainstream won't. We'll report on these questions with the residential schools and who's there or not. Mainstream media won't. The reason we can do it, though, again, hey, we got thousands of subscribers, and thank you all who have subscribed already. And if you haven't yet, get in there, guys. It's well worth it. We're not asking for charity. We won't take tax dollars. And we're offering a service, and we just want you to pay, $10 a month or even less with that $99 a year, and there's a free trial. Okay, enough self-promotion for now. Let's dig into a few more of these stories until my next guest gets here. Eva mentioned this one, and this is something else. Again, as the case just keeps falling apart for why the Emergencies Act was invoked, we're hearing more and more things. One of the things they were also saying was, we have to stop this because Ottawa businesses are being crushed by this convoy. Oh, it's costing the economy a fortune, and it's really harming these guys. And I'm sure it did hurt some. I mean, we got to admit, it must have hurt some. There were a lot of people not accessing some ground level things in places that they normally would have because there was a lot of people parked down there and the protests were going on. But was it nearly as much as they claimed? No, obviously not. Because they said, oh, we're going to have to make sure that we can put money out to save those businesses that suffered. Okay. They obviously had a condition, though, to say that, you had to prove some degree of lost sales or things like that. Because, of course, when you put millions on the table, it will disappear fast if there's no condition. So credit where the government is for what little credit I could ever give them. They didn't just throw it out there. But what ended up happening? Well, 82% of the money went unclaimed. So, yeah, the damage obviously wasn't that bad. The businesses weren't all lined up being able to prove a bunch of loss of business. 1,900 businesses could theoretically have received some of that support, yet only 8 million of it went out of the 20. Or was it less? Yeah, even less. So, I mean, 8.6 million, 1,200, 1,100 applications. So, again, we've got a government that just doesn't hesitate to exaggerate. It doesn't hesitate to play loose with the facts. And as time is passing, their case for what they did over there is falling apart. And that's the reason we've got to stay on their case. This government, I mean, where do you want to begin with things? But also with our sad sack legacy media, they just don't dig in on these things. And I'm going to get on to Mr. Giesbrecht again. He's coming on very soon. We're going to talk about the residential schools some more. And this is the whole First Nations things. I've written a number of columns on it. I've been frustrated with this for the most of my adult life. I worked in the oil field for decades. I worked on a lot of isolated First Nations reserves. And I mean, the conditions a lot of people are in are appalling. As I talked with Tom Flanagan when he was on, he's been on talking about that, though. It's not for lack of resources. We're spending a lot of money. We're trying what we can. We're chronically apologizing, but the outcomes aren't working. And we need to be allowed to discuss that. We need to say, well, what's not working? What's going wrong? But I tell you what, this is a taboo subject. The mainstream media is terrified of it. Politicians, if you want to see them cower and scurry off really fast, just bring up anything to do with First Nations. Well, we have to. It's a huge issue within Canada. It's dividing the country. People are upset. People are emotional. People are spending a lot of money, and people are divided. And a big part of that, of course, has been the Indian residential schools. And there's a lot of misinformation about those schools going around out there. I mean, we're basing a whole lot of what apparently happened in these institutions over those periods of time based on anecdotes, based on verbal, oral histories. And hey, you can't dismiss every oral anecdote. Of course not. That's important. But you've also got to dig down and get the real facts. And we're not doing that. People are afraid of that. But we have to. We have to. Because, again, as I said, we want to see resolution then. We want to see an end to these constant questions. We want to see an end to this division. Well, the very first step you have to do is get to the bottom of the issues and get to the truth. So let's bring Mr. Giesbrecht in and talk a little more about that. He's been on this for quite some time with the Frontier Center and written in a number of publications and has been very busy. He's a retired judge, and he's been on the show before. So welcome back, and looking forward to talking some more on this.
Thanks very much. It's good to be here, Cory.
So I'll start out. I noticed you'd kind of popped up in the news recently because of a piece you'd written that got picked up by the Fort Times, I think it was, for Fort Capel. And they just, it was eviscerated. They were furious that you dared write that piece and seriously question anything you'd said in it. Can you expand a bit on what happened there?
Yeah, I said that I wished everybody a happy Canada Day, and I said that we have reasons to be proud of our country. We are not a genocidal nation, and we should not feel that we have committed some sort of crime because we haven't. And I made some brief references to the numbers. And I said, yes, definitely, there are some indigenous communities that are very legitimately looking for burial sites of ancestors. And I support that completely. But unfortunately, in many communities, this is all being mixed up with these conspiracy theories about children who were killed by priests and secretly buried at night by 6-year-olds and thrown into prison, furnaces, etc. So I said those are conspiracy theories, and we should not be listening to those theories. And we should be proud of our country, and we should be looking at our real history and wishing each other a happy Canada Day.
Yeah, well, and that turned into something controversial in Winnipeg, where they've renamed, at least the city administration did, Canada Day, and shamed an electoral candidate for mayor for her daring to say she wanted to celebrate Canada Day. And again, they usually use this claims of genocide in the Indian residential schools as a reason why we should all be ashamed to be part of Canada.
Yeah, and maybe I could talk about what the evidence actually is about genocide and about children who did die at residential schools, because there were children who died at residential schools. There's no question about it. The actual number, and I won't go into a long, convoluted discussion of numbers here, because I know that's probably would not be useful. But the one number I would like to mention, which I think is very important and nobody contests, it's in the TRC. Terry Glavin referred to it in his excellent article in the National Post. The number that we should remember is 832. Now, that's the number of children who actually died at residential schools. And in the overwhelming number of cases, the cause was disease. And even then, it was tuberculosis. Tuberculosis was a major killer in Canada. At the time of Confederation, overall throughout the entire country, it was the #1 disease cause of death. But in the Indigenous communities, the rates were just terrible. So reserves, for various reasons, and I won't go into the history, but it has to do with crowded living conditions, undernourishment, lack of understanding of sanitation, that sort of thing. The tuberculosis rate was very high. So the number of children who actually died at residential schools was 832. And that's not out of line at all with the death rate on the reserve at the time. As a matter of fact, it's a fairly low number. The TRC makes a major mistake when they're dealing with that number, because they then expand on it and say, well, it was the residential schools that caused those children to die. In other words, they got tuberculosis at residential school, and as a result will include not only those 832, but then they include all kinds of children who died later, arguing that, well, they wouldn't have been sick except for the residential schools. Well, the evidence does not bear that out, Cory. The person that's usually quoted on these things is Dr. Peter Bryce. And Dr. Peter Bryce was very critical of the residential schools for the conditions that gave rise to disease, etc. But he was equally critical of the reserves where tuberculosis was rampant. And many of those conditions, the Indian people there had no control over, but there was terrible poverty, overcrowding. Families would often live 10 to a little house, lack of understanding of sanitation, etc. So Dr. Bryce looked at all of that, but here is the important quote from Dr. Bryce that I think is probably the most important quote in the entire TRC report, that is Truth and Reconciliation report. According to Bryce, of the children from 8 of the schools that he examined, every one of those children, every one of them had the beginnings of tuberculosis when that child entered the school. That is, on the first day of school, the child already had the beginnings of tuberculosis. which means in plain terms, most of those children would have died anyways, whether they were admitted to a residential school or not. It was because of the terrible conditions on the reserves. There is even discussion, you can go back and look at this, between the officials of the day who were saying, well, we have to do something about this. And they did try to do things. But some even argued, well, we should close the schools, or we should insist that every child has a clean bill of health before entering the schools. And the counter argument to that was, well, that would mean that 90% of the children would not even get admitted to residential schools. We'd have to close the schools down. In other words, there was such a high degree of tuberculosis in the population at the time that it was just a very sad fact that a certain percentage of people were going to end up dying from it. So I'll stop at that point. But that is the single most important quote, probably in the entire report concerning disease, because the children had tuberculosis, or at least most of them had the beginnings of tuberculosis when they first went into the residential school. So it was entirely unwarranted for the TRC to conclude that it was the residential schools that caused their death.
Yeah, and I mean, we have those numbers, they're there and they're undeniable. I mean, it leaves room to examine. I mean, another thing that is overlooked a lot is the vast majority of First Nations children never attended a residential school, but they still, as you said, experienced a lot of high mortality, disproportionate to people off of reserve. But if anything, we should be examining the entire reserve system, and particularly at that time. I mean, they were living in appalling conditions at that point, and we need to look historically and see why that was the case. But we have this pinpoint focus on the residential school aspect, and I believe you were talking about that before. Often kids were sent to those residential schools because the home conditions were so bad that it was a mercy to the children to get them out at least and into a residential school.
Yes, the schools increasingly became used as child welfare placements. The federal government had no special child welfare homes, and they simply used the residential schools. And I would argue that they made a big mistake by doing that. But they used residential schools as child welfare placements. And this was particularly so from the 1950s on, 1950s and 60s. There was terrible conditions on the reserve, which were exacerbated by what I've described as an explosion of the use of alcohol on the reserves. And that gave rise to many neglected children. And the residential schools, until the provincial agencies were brought in as a result of an agreement with the federal government, the residential schools housed all of those children, and many problems ensued. But you also mentioned the fact that such a small percentage of children even went to residential schools. And that's something that I think is very significant, because there seems to be a belief that most Indigenous children attended residential schools. They were just used by a small percentage. In the peak years of enrollment, approximately 1/3 of the status Indian children attended residential schools. If you look at the entire Aboriginal population, it's a much smaller percentage than that. But in the beginning years and in the later years, as few as 5% of the children actually attended residential schools. So the truth is that most Indian children either attended a day school or no school at all. Even into the 1940s, 40% to 50% of Indigenous children were not attending any school, and many of them attending day schools were there for less than half the year. In some cases, people would be enrolled in a school, and that's the last the teacher would see them. So Indigenous education has always been a very, very difficult problem, but now all of the focus has been on residential schools, and there's a gross exaggeration of the importance of residential schools in the history of the entire Canadian history. And it's particularly completely unfair to scapegoat the residential schools as the cause of Indigenous dysfunction, because that's completely untrue. It's a minor factor.
Yeah, and that's, I see an example in the comment scroll, and I don't really want to pick on a person, but still I want to point out this is the way the discourse tends to happen, and this is what we see from Aaron Petman saying, I can't imagine why anyone would ever want to justify or legitimize residential schools as I see here. Disgusting. So people put their fingers in their ears and start screaming as soon as we start trying to dig into the facts. I don't think anybody's trying to justify or legitimize things or try to sugarcoat or say they were beneficial. We just want to get the facts out right now because there's a lot of misinformation and hysterics going on this issue.
Yes, but you see, I think it's almost impossible to do. That type of reaction is typical. Anybody, what you and I are doing right now, we would be called deniers or denialists, something like that. And the message from these, I call them genocide hustlers, perhaps a harsh term, but these people who have basically made their careers, built their careers on trying to create the myth that Canada is a genocidal nation, using residential schools as the example of genocide. It's not true. But what they've basically done is shut down the discussion. They say things like, well, you are a denier or you are a denialist if you even have this conversation. And then they say, well, you should be listening to the survivors. And now that's one of the most insidious methods of all. Of course, we should listen to survivors, but there's no monopoly on truthfulness. A person's truthfulness does not depend on what school they went to or what ethnic background they have or anything like that. I mean, people tell the truth, people lie, people exaggerate. It has nothing to do with what school you went to or whether or not you are Indigenous or some other category. But they basically shut down the discussion, and anybody who's having the conversation you and I are trying to now is basically discounted as various names. I've even been called a Holocaust denier because I'm questioning the residential school narrative.
Yeah, well, and we posted a piece by Jaime Rubinstein last night that's questioned a lot of the residential school narrative too, but I got a strong suspicion he's not a Holocaust denier. But
no, he's not.
That's that is some of the narrative, and I honestly think some of it comes innocently from people who perhaps just they haven't dug that deep. They've looked at the superficial mainstream media reporting, and they're caring. That if they believe the very first myths you hear, that children were snatched away from families and stuffed into there, and they were abused, and they were murdered, and the bodies were hidden. I mean, people are horrified. They never like to imagine anybody would do that. Mm-hmm. But we need to cut through and make people understand that that isn't exactly what happened.
Yeah, well, exactly. And you referred to the forced to attend. Well, that's one of the biggest myths. The 150,000 children forced to attend residential schools and snatched out of their mother's arms. Well, that's absolutely untrue. Parents signed applications to have their children admitted to residential schools. Before 1920, there was no compulsory attendance at all. So Indigenous parents were at liberty to send their children or not to send their children. And even after 1920, parents had the choice of sending their children to either residential schools or day schools. It was only in areas where there were no day schools available that they were required to send them to residential schools. Now it gets a bit complicated because what I've said about the child welfare placements, those children, I guess you can say yes, if a child was taken and like an apprehended child and put in a residential school, they were forced to attend. You can use that language if you want, but the fact is that most Indigenous parents decided whether they wanted their child in a residential school or not, They had to put their child in some school, like every other citizen in Canada, and that could be a day school, and later it could be a public school. And many of them did that. Many of them chose that. But the idea that all of these children were forced to attend is one of the great myths, because it is just not true. Catholic parents who chose a residential school chose a Catholic residential school. Protestant parents chose a Protestant school. For some reason, Cory, which I'm not even understanding, it's the Catholic schools that are bearing the brunt of the criticism now. And all of these stories, and they are conspiracy theories about priests or nuns murdering children in unspecified ways and secretly burying them with the forced help of 6-year-olds. There's absolutely zero evidence supporting any such claim. And I think you recently published the archaeologists' report showing that it's almost impossible that there would be 215 secret graves at Kamloops. But this is now being, and it is hysteria, that's what it is. And it's being fueled by all of this government money, which is basically being thrown around these communities. And it's going to keep this false narrative going probably for years. We're probably going to be hearing about this for forever. It's doing great damage to the country domestically and internationally. I gave my example about the Uyghur campaign last time, so I won't do that again. But I think we're doing great harm to ourselves, and we are embittering particularly Indigenous youth who now don't know what to believe. They're being told that their ancestors were being murdered and thrown into furnaces. These are lies. These are false stories, and the responsible Indigenous leaders have a responsibility to tell them so. But that's not happening.
Yeah, well, and all we can do is just keep pushing, and we won't give up. And again, you know, if things are proven otherwise, then we'll adjust. I mean, but right now, the thing that always scares me is when people say we can't even talk about it. That's when there's a problem. That's when we don't get to the facts, and we're getting shouted down. And as you said, look, there's billions in settlements going out, and there's some class action lawyers who are doing really, really well out of those settlements, and they're very well inspired to keep a lot of this hysteria going. And it's unfortunate. But I'm going to have to let you go. Where can we find more information? And I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I'm published in various places. I would just say Google my name, and you could read whatever you want that I've written. I just wanted to mention, Cory, a subject we haven't touched on yet, and you might want to talk further about, is the fact that the RCMP have not investigated properly any of these claims, and this is a travesty. They should have immediately secured the area at Kamloops when this horrible claim was first made, and they should then have investigated and excavated if necessary. They haven't done so. They could have put an end to this nonsense a year ago. So if you want to talk about that sometime in the future, I'd be happy to.
We'll get you on and go more into that, because it's a very valid point and worthy of another 15 minutes of discussion. So, all right. Well, thank you, and well, keep on it, and we'll just keep trying to get to the bottom of things.
Okay. Thanks, Cory.
Right, thanks. That was Brian Giesbrecht, a retired judge, and he's done a lot of work on this. You can find it in the Frontier Center and things as well. So a lot of the comments, yeah, Christine Code saying they're being told by our elders, so they're lying. Actually, sometimes yes, they are. Or sometimes people have misconceptions. Even, you know, sometimes people believe things. The example Tom Flanagan used quite often, again, and that's the unfortunate thing with oral history, but it's the reality. You know, remember the telephone game when you stand around and you whisper something in somebody's ear and you get it all the way around in a circle. And of course, by the time whatever you whispered in the first person's ear is totally different by the time it's gone through 8 people. We've got oral history now that we're talking about and we're basing things on from 80 years ago, 90 years ago. And yes, it gets changed. It gets, whether there's ill intent or not, it's not necessarily accurate. And some of the stories, and that's in that piece by Jaime Rubenstein that we put up last night, on the Kamloops residential school. And these are quotes from children who attended at that time. And there was this rumor, this myth, and kids do that. You have those myths, you have ghost stories, you have things like that, and you start believing them later in life. That there was this myth that there were secret burials in the apple orchard outside the school. That's what all this GPR study was about, to try and find these bodies from this apparent conspiracy of burying children. Now, if this was really happening, and as was put at the very end, why isn't there a forensic investigation? If this was anything else, you'd be saying, we're looking for the criminals. We need the bodies. We need autopsies. We need to find out what happened. Well, it's been over a year and not a single excavation's been done. As well, now, as we've seen with the evidence too that I posted on that story, there have been other excavations that happened since that happened. There's been trenches going across that whole area. There was a sewage pond dug in that whole area where these bodies were supposed to be, and not one body was found. There might not, and I'll just say might not, because we haven't dug to find out, might not even be a body there. And if there are bodies, we don't know how and why they went in, but we've jumped onto assumptions. And this isn't helping. This isn't helping. We want to get to the truth. We want to find that way. I won't deny there was abuse by priests and religious people running those schools. Absolutely. Unfortunately, child predators are drawn to circumstances where they can get control of children. And a good way to do it was through the religious orders, in order to get onto those schools, the residential schools and non. And it happened. There were people abused in those schools. But to the extent, that's the question. And what was the history of the schools? As we said, not everybody was forced into them. Another problem too was the conditions on the reserves. And this is a problem too. And this is where Canada should be examining what we did wrong. But the conditions on the reserve were terrible. And children were taken out of abusive households sometimes, again, where the parents were in just too inebriated a condition to keep the children safe. And they were actually brought to the residential schools for safety. I know people don't like hearing that, but there's some truth. Those are the ones that were often forced. And that still happens now. And that's what a lot of these lawsuits are coming now too, with social services recently taking, and it's disproportionate, children from Aboriginal households, Indigenous households, and putting them into social services or foster care. But the problem is those households aren't safe for those children. It's not some conspiracy to snatch people away from their parents. The government, for the most part, particularly now, really would rather not. But we can't deny what's going on. Then we should be looking at why. Why is there such a socioeconomic disaster with our Indigenous people? Because this is a big problem. There is a lot of suffering. But we've got to stick to the facts and set these emotions aside. And we've got to quit trying to shut down debate. We've got to quit trying to shout people down. And there's a lot of mythology. I saw Ashley pointed out another one with the smallpox blankets. He called that genocide. That was a myth. Look it up. There's no truth to it. There was no smallpox blanket thing killing kids. It's just, those myths still go around. It doesn't mean a person said it to try and cause harm, but that's just the reality. That's what's gone on. We just got to go into it. And there could be things wrong. Hey, look, if these things happen in Kamloops or some of these other schools, what's this? Babies were found in the wall of a Catholic nun rooming house in Alberta. No, they weren't. God, guys, come on. Where's the police investigations? Where are they? Let's get a forensic investigation going. Then some people should be charged. Let's dig some holes. And hey, I'll tell you, I'll be in the front of the line. If they dig a bunch of holes in Kamloops and find a bunch of bodies of children with ligature marks around their necks, or they've been dismembered, or all some of the crazy stories that have gone on, then let's get on it and find out exactly what happened there. But we haven't had one yet. It's not to say they aren't there, but we need to have the conversations. We need to have the facts. Oh, and see now, Rocky says it's a cover up in St. Paul. Well, welcome back to conspiracy theories. Really? Come on. So, we got babies hidden in walls. We got the stories of children thrown in furnaces. We got the stories that, and people who believe them. I can understand why they're upset. Of course, what a horrible thing to think. It's happened. But I will not be shouted down. I won't. I'm the opinions editor. I put the piece up that Jaime Rubenstein sent us the other day. Yeah, because I give the thumbs up and thumbs down on those. If I thought it was complete baloney or trying to spread hate or any crap like that, I wouldn't put it up there. Rocky saying, let's get on it. Well, get on it. Call the police, Rocky. Get them up there. Find those baby bodies and let's investigate it. But right now, it's just an oral myth. And I guess I can't say 100% that it didn't happen, but we need evidence. We need evidence. And we're making settlements based on oral attestations of crimes that haven't been proven, settlements that are costing billions of dollars. Or as is also pointed out, this is hurting people. This is harming Indigenous youth, wondering what happened in the past. This is harming unity in general, the relationship between non-Indigenous people and Indigenous people. This is a big problem, but we need the facts, and we aren't getting them. Why is it a year later and we haven't moved a teaspoonful of dirt on the Kamloops' apparent graves? Shouldn't we be looking? Shouldn't we be confirming? But we aren't. We aren't. Because why? I'm sorry, but I suspect it's because, as we said, a lot of people are making a lot of money out of these class action settlements. And, RCMP corruption. See, Rocky is now saying it's a conspiracy, the RCMP. And hey, I'm not a big fan of the RCMP and everything they do, but they're not hiding baby bodies. It's not happening. So, yes, we're making settlements to make it go away, as Marvin Sherry Stewart's saying, and buy votes. And there's some truth to it. But the thing is, it's not going away, is it? Every settlement that gets paid, a new apparent atrocity gets brought up, and we get another apology and another settlement. I don't blame the people for taking the settlement. Of course, why not? Somebody's handing you money. Particularly, a lot of First Nations people are living in rough conditions. And, but we've got to get real with some of this. Let's see the bodies. And if we've got the bodies, let's find out what happened. Another of the things from Jaime's piece was pointing out there was documentation of all these children coming and going, if only for the sheer fact that they needed to pay their bills. They got paid per student. Now, somehow 200 and some were secretly killed and buried. And yet there's no parents who are saying, I misplaced my child in that period. Nobody looking for them. No relatives looking for them. We can't find the names of any of these missing people, apparently. Where are they? Let's have the conversation. It's sensitive for a lot of people. It is, and reasonably so. I mean, you can't think of anything more sensitive than the deaths of children. But, okay, well, we've got our next guest coming in. And while he settles in, I'm going to speak really quickly about one of our sponsors, and that is the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. And this is Maxime Bernier joining me on my right here. Good to see you again.
Nice meeting.
Yeah. And we will, I'm just going to run through our sponsors up and paying our bill and keep the lights on because I'm running overtime on that.
I prefer that you're doing that than asking money from the federal government.
We refuse to take a nickel from the federal government, and we pride ourselves on that. So the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, they've been a great sponsor for us for quite some time now. If you own firearms, if you're looking to own firearms, or I think, even most important, if you don't own them, but you respect the rights of others to own firearms, you should get a membership with these guys because they're standing up for those rights. And it's if you give them up, you're not getting them back. We've got a government that is hell-bent on taking away your property, on taking away your firearms. If you don't organize, if you're waiting for someone else to do it for you, you're going to lose your stuff. You got to get together. You have to organize. There's not many lessons I like to take from the left. But one I'll give them is they do know safety in numbers, and that's why they set up their unions. Well, likewise, with the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, get together. It's an association. Take out a membership and stand up for yourself. They're a great group. It's not that expensive, and it's well worth it. Their website is cssa-cila.org. Okay, that helps pay the bills. Now, back to Mr. Bernier. Thanks for coming in. I see you're all stampeded up this week.
Yes, absolutely. For me, I like to be here. People, journalists from Toronto used to call me the Albertan from Quebec, and I'm very proud of that. I like to be here. We have the same kind of values and vision.
Well, there is. I mean, that's something I've talked about in the past back when I was involved in independence movements. There's more in common with a lot of Quebecers than we might think in Alberta. I mean, we're clashing because of the battles over the federal system. But if we had our own provincial autonomy, I got a feeling we wouldn't be fighting with each other nearly as much.
Absolutely. And for me, that's a good thing that you're asking for more autonomy. You're asking the federal government to respect our Constitution, respect our Charter of Rights and Freedom. And it's all about that, the PPC. We created that body based on 4 principles, as you may know: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And we are doing politics differently. And when I'm seeing that 32% of Albertans are ready to separate, more than in Quebec. In Quebec, it's at 30%. There's a challenge here for establishment politicians, and they don't want to engage, and they don't want to have a discussion. And for us, Western alienation is there, and we have a solution for that. And we're speaking about that solution not only here in Alberta, but also outside Alberta.
Well, and outside of Alberta as well, that same poll I think you're referencing also found that 21% of Ontarians felt they would be better outside of Confederation. Like, what an indication that this country is broken when across the country, even the ostensibly the most powerful province in the country, and citizens aren't feeling well in control of their affairs there either.
Absolutely. And the solution to that is to stop to interfere in provincial jurisdiction, but also to be sure that this country will be freer and more prosperous. And the way to do that is to build pipelines. And we have the solution for that is to change the equalization formula, to be less generous. But we are the only national political party that is saying that, because all these establishment politicians, including Pierre Poilievre, that is a career politician, he jumped into politics at 25 years old. He never had a real boss in his life. And so he cannot understand, and he's doing politics based on polling and focus group. And it's not popular to speak for less equalization money and changing the formula in Eastern Canada. So they don't want to speak about that. But that's important, like you just said, for the prosperity of our country, but for the unity of our country.
And you've been outspoken on other things. Something that was interesting, I just kind of reviewed your recent tweets and the United Nations and some of the, because we seem almost sometimes beholden to international interests when we can't seem to get our domestic affairs in order, but nobody speaks up about that.
No, I'm the only one. I said that at the debate in 2019 when I was on the stage, because as you know, at the last election, they didn't want us to be there. But at the next one, I'll be there, because the rule was for us to have 4% of the vote. We had 5%, more than the Green Party, only after 3 years. And so I'll be there and I will have that discussion. And I said at that time that the UN is a dysfunctional organization. Actually, we are giving to the UN every year $1 billion over there. What I'm saying, we can save money, because our goal is not for us not to be part of the UN. Yes, as a country, we will be part in the UN, we'll participate, but at one condition. Everything that they must do must be in line with our values. If it's not in line with our values, they won't have our money. So I believe that we can save a lot of money.
Because I mean, they're not going to change to match our values anytime soon.
So, I mean, you've been traveling across the country. The last time I had you on the show, you were on the East Coast at that time. So you're still organizing, I imagine. I mean, with a minority government, you're always preparing for the next election. How's that been going?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. You know, I did a road trip last May in Atlantic Canada, in the Maritimes. Road trip because, as you know, I didn't have the right to travel across the country. Now I can travel by plane, so I'm doing that. I'm here. And in Atlantic Canada, actually, our goal was to build the party, being sure to be ready for the next election, because, like you just said, we don't know. It can be this far, it can be in 3 years, in 4 years, but we will be ready. And I did some rallies over there also. I was in BC 2 days ago. I'm here for the weekend. I'll be back also. During summertime, for me, it's the best time. Do rallies, barbecues, meeting our people, helping our riding association, across the country to raise money. And I'm very pleased because we have very strong and generous donors. We are able to work and build this party step by step. And as you know, the platform of our party is always the same. I said the same thing at the election in 2019, same thing at the last election, and that will be the same platform. So that's why we are able to attract people. Our members and our people know, okay, what we are saying today, it will be the same thing tomorrow, until we win that battle of ideas, until we win that common sense revolution. And I believe that it will happen.
Well, and you know, it kind of segues into what I was speaking of earlier with a sensitive issue, but being able to just speak up and take them on. And that was something, for example, Mr. Poilievre was here a few days ago. We had a good conversation, but I asked about Tamara Lich, for example, and he kind of dodged off. Yeah. We've got some people languishing in jail right now for taking part in protests, and our federal candidates don't want to touch that with a 10-foot
pole. Did you ask him about pipelines?
On that interview, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, because he doesn't have a solution. He's saying publicly that he's for pipelines, but Upper also was for pipeline. And actually, we don't have any pipelines right now. And the only way to have that is to use the Constitution, Section 9210. And like that, the federal government will have the full jurisdiction and nobody will be able to stop. if Quebec is against the pipeline, they won't be able, because the federal government will have the jurisdiction and the responsibility to build pipelines. But Poilievre and all these establishment politicians won't say that, because they don't want to unplease Quebec or BC. Did you ask a question about immigration? If it's because he's aligned with also the mass immigration, he won't do anything about that.
Yeah, well, and I'm just remembering the pipelines. Actually, we did talk briefly about it, because I did ask, because I said it's a dicey area, because you want provincial autonomy and respect that, but at the same time, it's a national interest to get the pipeline to the coast. And Quebec is saying, well, we're not going to allow an Alberta pipeline across here. What would you do? And I think he spoke along the lines of, we would convince Quebec as to why the pipeline is a good thing.
Yeah, but that's not the solution. The solution is to be, Harper tried to convince Quebec and everybody. The Quebec government is listening to the radical environmentalists, but the reality is they cannot stop a pipeline if we use the Constitution. And it's easy. You pass a law, you said that pipeline, Energy East, any pipeline, is in the national interest of our country. And like that, the federal government will be able to do that. And actually, we did that more than 100 times in our history since Confederation. That's why we were able to build national infrastructure. So that's the solution. They don't want to speak about that. And I like Pierre Poilievre. He's a good speaker, but if you listen to his stand speech, it's a 20-minute stand speech with buzzword, and he did a lot of focus group to be sure to please you. So I believe that people are tired of establishment politicians, and Pierre is one of them. And when I said, I was a conservative, and I said this party is morally and intellectually corrupt, I said that in 2018, and we have the proof. Now Pierre Poilievre is the favor of the month. And in a couple of months from now, they're going to go to the left, because, as you know, to be in government, they need to have seats in the GTA. There's more seats in the GTA than in all Alberta. So he will go to the left before the election to try to please them. So he's doing politics based on survey and polling, not based on conviction. That's the big difference between myself and all these establishment politicians.
And that's the frustration with regional conservative values, or liberty values, that they aren't shared. And mathematically, a party tends to be beholden to central Canada. I see one of the commenters, JB Alberta, said, though, how do we get the strong conservative vote here in central Alberta then to move to the PPC? Because they are wedded to that conservative party.
Yeah, well, I'm telling them, there's no such thing as splitting the vote. Pierre Poilievre wants to split the Liberal vote. That's his job to be in government. You voted for the Conservative and you had Trudeau 2 times. So vote for what you believe in, vote for your ideas. And, if you want a change, vote for what you want, and you'll have more chances to have that change, to have what you want. So that being said, if you vote for a PPC candidate, I don't believe that a Liberal will be elected here in Alberta. So you won't split any vote. And that candidate will be insurance police for you, being sure that the Conservative will stay conservative and will be in the right path. That's what I'm telling people. A vote for a PPC candidate in Alberta is a vote for your values. And to be sure, we can be the balance of power like the NDP. And keep the Conservative in the right direction, because they will try to please everybody and they will go to the left like Harper did. And speaking about Conservative, we were in government and I was part of that government. I want to ask people, what is the legacy of Stephen Harper? You had Stephen Harper for 9 years as Prime Minister. Nothing, no legacy. Oh, sorry about that. Maybe the Wheat Board. Dismantled the Wheat Board. That was the legacy of Stephen Harper. Nothing for the West. And they are the Conservative and Poilievre is the candidate of the establishment, is the candidate of Harper and the establishment of the Conservative Party of Canada. And they will do like they always did, having policies to please Ontario and Quebec. And that's why Poilievre is not able to tell you that he will use the Constitution and impose a pipeline on Quebec and BC. For the good of our country and the prosperity of our country and the unity of our country. And, I'm from Quebec. I can tell you that Quebecers, if you explain to them that it's safer for the environment and for the population to transport oil and gas by pipelines than by trains or trucks, they understand that. And we have a lot of pipelines in Quebec, actually. All the gas that is going to the Trudeau Airport in Montreal, coming from the port of Montreal, it's by pipelines under the city. So we know that pipelines are safe, and we need to explain that. But these politicians are looking at the poll, and they say, oh, Quebecers right now don't want a pipeline, so I won't speak about it. That's not leadership. Quebecers right now, if you do a poll, they're against pipeline, because for the last 15 years, politicians in Quebec were speaking against pipeline. You just have to go a little bit further and explain that to the population. That's the way we are doing politics, by conviction, and we think that we have the best idea for this country, and that's why we will win the argument, and we will win the battle of ideas. So if you want more autonomy in Alberta, I want to give you control of your immigration. I want to give you control of your police force. I want to give you, if you want a pension plan like Quebec, you must be able, everything that Quebec has, it must be the same for Alberta and every province. That's a radical decentralization. And if you want to know more, the people can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca, and read the speech that I delivered in 2019 on radical decentralization. So I believe that there's a bright future for Alberta inside this country if they vote for more autonomy at the provincial level. They must show to other Canadians that they're serious. They vote for autonomy at the provincial level, and we are the only political party at the national level that will do it.
Well, and I mean, likewise, Jean Charest came in and he said he would support a provincial pension plan and a police force and those things as well. But we hear that a lot.
Yeah. So Charest is saying that here, but actually, to do that, you need to believe in it. It's not because you want to. Charest told you that because he did some polling and focus group, and that's what you want to hear right now for having your support. I was saying that before there's a separatist movement in Alberta. I was saying that in 2018, 2019 in my speeches, because I believe in it, because I'm speaking about respecting the Constitution. And it's all about respecting our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and our Constitution, the separation of powers between the federal government and the provincial government.
Yeah. So what's in your future for your tour in the next few days?
I will meet a lot of people here. I'm very pleased. If they want to know what I'm doing, they can go on the website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca, and look at the events. I'll do a barbecue tonight, and I'll a breakfast also here in Calgary tomorrow morning, meeting our people, speaking about our values, promoting our vision, because I cannot count on the mainstream media to give us some coverage. That's why I want to thank you for that opportunity for me to speak to your viewers. I want to thank you for what you're doing as an independent media. You, True North, it's important. We need you. And, speaking about the mainstream media, I had a discussion with Jordan Peterson, and I asked Jordan, what can I do to be able to be more visible in the mainstream media because they are canceling us? And Jordan told me, Maxime, forget the mainstream media. Be on social media. Speak to the alternative independent media. That's the future, and you'll be successful. So I'm very pleased that I'm here with you today.
Well, thanks. No, I appreciate you coming in. And we are seeing more, I think, people realizing that the legacy media is just sick to its core, but alternatives are coming up. So there's hope. Things can look positive. Well, that's great. So you've got a barbecue and a breakfast, and just maybe one more time, where's your website so that viewers, we got a lot of Albertans.
peoplespartyofcanada.ca, but also they can follow me on Twitter, Maxime Bernier on Twitter, and I tweeted the information on that, and I'll do that also tomorrow morning.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming in to talk to us today, and enjoy the rest of your visit in Alberta.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity, and have a nice day.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that was, as you saw, Maxime Bernier of the People's Party of Canada, and they are still hard at work. And it's hard to get oxygen when you have a legacy media that only focuses on the mainstream. And we can get around that, though. I mean, we have alternatives. It's the information flows from the outside, whether it's us or, as he said, True North or Rebel. We can't be blocked. let the information get out there. And that's been a lot of the theme today. And it's a good theme today, that we can hit the issues and the alternatives can get out there, whether it's a party, whether it's media, and let voters and citizens and individuals decide. Okay, I see Melanie Risden out there on the midway at the Stampede there. It looks like she's ready to speak with someone. Let's get her on there. How you doing, Mel?
Yeah, good. It's beautiful down here again for another day at the Stampede grounds, and we are talking this time to a real cowboy again. This is Rocker Steiner. He is a bareback rider, but he's a rookie bareback rider, and my understanding is he is rocking it this Stampede. Tell us how old you are.
I'm 18 years old.
And where are you from?
Weatherford, Texas.
So he's a Texas boy, and this is his first time visiting Stampede, and apparently, tell me about your first ride.
Well, it was everything that everybody said it was going to be, and I had a really good horse, and the crowd was here, and I think I put on a show, and I think they liked it. So.
Yeah, I think they liked it, and I am pretty sure your first ride here at the Stampede, you took first place for the day, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It was a good day.
And how's it been going for the rest of the days for you?
I've been going good. Drawn pretty good, placed in all 3 rounds, and got a good one today. So it should be another good day.
Yeah, I know we don't have you very long. He's got to go get ready here pretty quickly. So how long have you been doing this? When did you start?
I started when I was about 13, almost 14 years old, and so I've been doing it almost 5 years, and it's been all gas the whole time. So.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I hear you really get the crowd going when you're riding. So having a lot of fun. And I guess my question to you is: it all business right now, or do you get to have some fun here too?
Oh, it's all business before the rodeo, but after, I mean, all the boys hang out and have a good time, and it's not always so serious, but before it definitely is.
Well, and I'm pretty sure you're enjoying the fact that the legal age here is 18 in Alberta compared to down in Texas, huh?
Yeah, well, I can't say I haven't had my share of practice in the U.S., but it's definitely more legal here.
For sure. What's your favorite part about it? Like you're doing a lot of traveling. I'm assuming, like, where are you heading to from here?
My favorite part about it, I mean, the crowd here is awesome, and they love cowboys up here, and we love them, and Canada's been real good to us. So we're trying to be good to it, and just have a lot of fun, and I can't wait to be back next year and finish this year out.
All right. And so in the standings, if I understand it correctly, is it okay? I know some people are a little superstitious. Are you leading in the standings right now?
I'm like 8th in the world standings, somewhere around there. I mean, and this time of the summer, everybody, they're the 10th to first, I mean, about the 5th to 10th to 11th, 12th guys always, they're always going up and down. People are passing you and you're passing them, and they'll pass you back up. So right now I'm sitting around 7th or 8th or something like that. I don't know.
Very good. And so if you win the Stampede, which would be phenomenal as for your rookie year, what do you walk away with?
You walk away with $50,000. It counts for the standings and $100,000. So it's not a small check, and definitely not for an 18-year-old. And I think I might go wild if I do get that check. And my dad will probably ground me for about a month, so I don't just go absolutely wild.
Well, this is maybe why your nickname is Rockstar.
Yeah.
So where are you heading after this?
Going home for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I got some torn up ribs. Gonna go home for a week and then go to Cheyenne, Wyoming, Salinas, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, bareback riding, like that. You must be injured a lot. Like, I don't know. It's got to be tough on the body.
Yeah. I've been hurt twice this year, and I tore my PCL on my left knee, and took 2 months off in the winter, and separated some ribs, and was out over the 4th of July. But I look at guys like JB Mooney, and they make this stuff seem like a scrape on the knee, and they're a lot tougher than I am. So
yeah. So you're pretty tough yourself. Yeah, you know what? Good luck. I know you're riding here pretty soon. I think you're one of the first today, and good luck for the entire contest here. And thanks for joining us. I think this is an amazing experience for you. I'm sure being young and a rookie rider and winning as much as you have been. yeah, we're looking forward to seeing how you do, and we'll touch base with you when we're back here next year.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Cory, we're going to see if we can find something to look at on the midway, maybe some food to try out, and we will touch base with you hopefully before the end of your show.
We'll see. All right. Thanks, Mel. And if not, I'll see you when you get back to the studio here.
Sounds good.
Right on. Yes, that's our Melanie Risden. She's out there with Rob Ward. They're wandering the grounds. And yeah, it's quite a catch. You know, he's one of the top of his field. They're going on the bareback riding. And as well, just he's obviously a character, and he's grabbing a lot of attention and interest in the rodeo world. I mean, 18 years old and getting going. Yeah, you got to love that Texan accent. And, you know, yeah, as you say, he's still got to fix his ribs up and things like that. Like, that's a tough, rough sport. And, you know, I used to ski jump way back, not nearly as rough as that. The difference is ski jumping back then and now, because I got a feeling I got all the training. If I strap those skis on, I could probably manage to land a jump still. But if I wiped out now, I would be in the hospital for months if I survived. When I used to wipe out when I was in my teens, whatever, you shake it off, you're a little sore for a couple of days, and then you just go out the next week. So, yeah, this young fella has already beaten his body up a bit, but it seems to be paying off, and he's well, winning those things out there at the Stampede. That's a big rodeo, that one. That's some high profile if you pull off a win in that one, and he should have a lot of years ahead of him there. So, yeah, we're going to try something in a little bit here with having some callers come in. We're going to do it through Zoom. And, you know, and end off the show, we'll talk with a couple of folks on there if you want to get on. We're going to have that set up pretty soon. And, you know, if we can get this sort of thing working, we can get it more interactive. I know there's a few commenters, you know, who disagreed quite strongly with what I was saying, and that's fair enough. It's fine. We can go back and forth. Or if there's other points we wanted to hit, you know, I like passing questions on to the guests and things such as that. And this is an opportunity to give it a try. So we'll do that probably in a little while. I think Nico's going to share a link for folks to be able to get into the queue and see who's going to come on and have a chat on here. There's the link if you wanted to get on there. If you've got Zoom, that's the ID and the passcode, and you can get into the lobby, and we'll see. We'll have a chat with some of you guys who are out there listening and watching all the time. Let's see. In the meantime, I'm going to talk about a little bit of news items going on here. Here's one that gets me going. Yeah, and you can just come in with audio, by the way, Jet. You know, some people say, you know, you seem too old to show your face on Zoom. Hey, I'm still showing my 51-year-old mug out there. Come on. I know some folks still manage to live a little longer than me. There's nothing wrong with showing the ravages of time. It means you made it this far. But either way, yeah, on Twitter, you know, I was getting going, the usual things. When it comes to healthcare reform, the bottom line is it's not working. It's not working. Canada is falling farther and farther all the time on every index for healthcare, for your outcome, how it's working out for you, and for the dollars spent. And here's a case in Ontario. Like, people got to wake up. There's a guy who had a shattered leg. He was in a hospital hallway for 4 days. 4 days. Can you imagine? 76 years old. He shattered a bone, and he was stuck in the hospital in Sault Ste. Marie for 4 days. Like, this is beyond the pale. It's surprising that poor fella survived it even. And these kinds of stories just keep getting more and more common. You know, the waiting lists. If it's not emergency, it's the other waiting lists. Specialized procedures, hip replacements, knee replacements, hernia surgery, cancer treatment, you name it. There are people who can't get treatment right now in our system. This is supposedly, again, you know, people saying, oh, it's the best system in the world. Well, no, I'm afraid it's not. And, you know, getting back to, you know, things whether we're allowed to talk about them or not, that's part of the problem. Speaking of mythology, I mean, we've built that mythology around the Canadian health system that it's the best one in the world. And I'm sorry, but it's not. And another thing that drives me nuts, as soon as you start the conversation, well, look at the American system. No, I don't care about the American system. The American system isn't a good system either. He's got aspects. The waiting lists aren't such a problem down there, and they've certainly got a lot more facilities. You look at the ICU levels throughout the pandemic in Montana, a state with a fraction of the population of Alberta, yet they had far more ICU capacity than Alberta. You can't sit there and say the American system is all bad, but there are problems when you got to pay for some of your private care and things. But I don't care. because there's 100 other systems out there, 150 other systems out there. There's systems all over Europe. There's systems through Asia. There's systems in South America. Look at them. Let's look at them, because a lot of those systems are surpassing ours. So quit acting as if there's only two systems on Earth, because that's what happens. They keep saying as if there's the American and there's the Canadian and there's nothing else. Well, that's absolutely untrue. That's a pure myth, and it's a falsehood, and it's leading to us having substandard care. You know, healthcare is the number one, almost every election, provincially particularly, number one issue. You know, I've worked on campaigns. You always want to see what people are most concerned about, and it's healthcare. But they never want to change it because they've been driven into their heads for so long that this is the best one on earth. All we need to do is spend more money. That's the only thing you're allowed to say when it comes to our system. Spend more money, spend more money, spend more money. Listen to Rachel Notley. There's a broken record. But of course, she's beholden to her union masters, not to the patients, not to the citizens, not to the people, despite what she claims. She just wants more union jobs, making more money. And we've got to examine the system. If it's really what your top issue is, then let's actually look at it and try to figure out how we can get our top outcomes. And there's some European models, again, and here's the big dirty word, there's private. Yes, they allow more private than we do. And even worse, private companies make profit. I don't care. I don't care. Good for them. I don't care. Make a profit as long as I'm getting care. As long as it's as good a care as we can get. Profit is not a dirty word. Don't listen to the socialists. The only ones who will tell you that profit is a dirty word are socialists. Socialism never brings innovation. It never brings good customer service. It never brings, you know, all it does, I mean, what's that term I've heard? It's the equal distribution of poverty. They can't bring everybody up to a good level, but they can work to drag everybody down to the same crappy level. Same thing in the Soviet Union. Yeah, nobody went without health care there. Wait for a long time for it, though. Everybody had a job. Didn't make a lot. Nobody starved, but your food sucked. Nobody went homeless, but you lived in a dingy apartment building. And what did they invent? Look, what has ever come out of socialist countries that's creative, that's outstanding, that's different, you know? What sort of innovations? What sort of inventions? All socialist nations ever do is try to replicate on an equal level the stuff that the developed world with private capitalism going on. They try to bring it into their own countries and run it by the government. The government can't manage anything worth crap. We know that. They can't even renew passports. Again, how is it you say that healthcare is your most important issue of them all, but you want to entrust the group of people who can't renew your passport to manage it for you? And gets back in a lot with what I talk about with capital punishment. You know, people who support capital punishment, but at the same time, look at the ability of the government. Do you really want to give these imbeciles in government the ability to execute people? I'm not so sure about this. All right, hey, check out some of those links, guys. See if you can get in on that Zoom meeting. I wouldn't mind chatting with one or two of you out there. Become a guest today. Become my guest to cap off the show before the weekend hits. In the meantime, though, it looks like we got Melanie's got something else going on out there on the Stampede Midway. We might check in with her and see what's happening. Or they're still walking around trying to get their shot. Yeah, LinkedIn users saying, yeah, equal distribution of misery unless you're a high-ranking member of the Communist Party. Then you can get the finest treatment Switzerland can offer. And there's truth to that. Like when we talk about healthcare, people say, we can't have a two-tier system. We can't have a two-tier system. We can't have somebody get better care than somebody else. Well, hate to bother you, sunshine, but we're already there. We're already there. The people who are very, very wealthy, they're already leaving the country to get better care. And the people who are desperate are leaving the country to get better care. See, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or not. Say you've got a house you worked your whole lifetime. You've got some equity in it. You know, you've got a couple $100,000 worth in there. You're not rich. You're doing okay. You're not poor, but you're doing, and you're told you need a bypass or you're probably going to die in the next 6 months. We're going to schedule it for 9 months from now. Because that's really what some of the choices are coming down to. Well, what the hell are you going to do? You're going to refinance your house and you're going to fly somewhere and get it done. And it is happening. That is what's happening. Or if you don't have that home equity, you're going to go asking your family members to kick in. And if you're a decent family member, they probably will. Yeah, we'll fund you to get out there. We're not talking about the domain of the rich, the privileged. We're talking about the desperate. So let's stop this. And if there's going to be care then happening where people pay out of pocket to get it a little faster, let's keep it in Canada because it'll speed you up in the line. but you got to set aside the envy. And that's part of the problem, the politics of envy. Oh no, that guy got in faster than me. Oh, well, get over it. He also got you in faster as well because he paid out of pocket for something. All right, let's see. Looks like Melanie might be ready for a hit there. She's out somewhere. It looks like a park or by a sign. And we'll talk to our Mel Risden. She's out in the midway with Rob Ward. Hey, Melanie, where you at now?
Yeah, so we're down at the Elbow River Camp, and this used to be way over kind of beside the grandstand, but I guess for a couple of years now, it's been moved down to this section. We're kind of across the river from the grounds, and they've set up here, and it's beautiful. So there's a lot of history to the camp here, and you can come down to it's where they have all the teepees set up. They've got all sorts of different vendors down here with indigenous crafts, indigenous foods you can try, and lots of places to sit. It's actually really nice here. Lots of grass, some trees for shade, and then have a look at some of these crafters here. They've just got absolutely beautiful crafts and clothes and jewelry and just amazing things that you can come look at here. Definitely something you don't want to miss when you come down to the Calgary Stampede. A lot of heritage here and a lot of history. You can see just across the park here, they've got all of the teepees set up here, and apparently the people that sort of run or own the teepees, they have a lot of history in the area, and so they love to talk. They love to tell their stories. You can come down, you can meet them, you can you can talk with them for a long time. Actually, there's quite a few people that circle through and cycle throughout the days, and you can ask them questions and come sit in the teepees and check all sorts of different things that they used to use and tools and things like that. So it's very cool. There's some shopping here that you can check out as well. So I would highly recommend you just cross over the bridge, you come check it out. And this is just one of the other cool things you can come and experience at the Calgary Stampede.
Great. Yeah, that was it's been a long standing tradition for the First Nations people to come out, and they would set up and live in their teepees on site. I remember as a kid coming out, I have to admit it felt a little awkward because you're walking by and they're living there, and you feel like you're intrusive or poking in. So, I mean, there is some respect people's privacy, but I see it looks like it's much better laid out now for just some good visiting and interaction and get to know some of our First Nations neighbors. So it's another opportunity to pick things up on the Midway.
Yeah, and it's a lot more space, right? Like, it's really open, and apparently they've had the citizenship ceremonies here as well. And what we're going to do too, we're going to take a minute to thank our ambassador, our Stampede ambassador. Kevin has been meeting us daily. He's been taking us around. He's been getting us connected with all the cool people we've talked to here. So thanks, Kevin. You still have a few more days to go.
We're close. We're getting close, but it's been a wild ride. It's been fun.
Well, he's been an excellent ambassador. We've talked to some great people, so it's been lots of fun down here. Still have the weekend.
Well, great. Thank you, Melanie, Kevin, and Rob for giving us all those updates through the week on that. And yeah, that reminder to everybody else, you still got today and 2 more days to get out there and hit the Stampede. So we will check in when you get back.
All right.
Okay, that was our Melanie Risden out on the grounds at the Stampede. Okay, so we're going to test out the call-in section of the show here. We've got Regina on the line, and we'll see how that works. I want to get this more interactive, more than just typing things and responding. Let's have some conversations. So are you hearing me all right there, Regina? Oh, well, this is why we test things. So, we've lost Regina. Okay. But we're trying different interactive things. As I said, we put the Zoom link out there. We're kind of debugging a little bit towards the end of the show today as we come up on the weekend and let's see. Regina's in the waiting room again. I'll let her in. And we've got some connection issues. And she's trying Zoom. I mean, a lot of us have gotten used to these types of platforms, things like that, because, I mean, we can only hit things with our fingers, so long to try and send the comments my way, and it's not quite as back and forth and interactive as we might be able to do I mean, one of the things we're trying to fill the void of is the old talk radio, you know, where you used to get the calls and talk and interact and see some things. So let's see if this is working now. Hello, Regina, do you hear me? All right, so obviously we still got some stuff to work out on it, but next week we'll try it again and we'll figure out some stuff to try for more interactive type of things. So just a minute. It appears I might have Regina muted. I'm trying to hear her now. Okay, we're going to have to test this more another time. So either way, we're getting there, guys. We're expanding. We are evolving, and you know, we're going to fill that talk radio void and take it up. And part of that will be the interactive elements of it and things such as that. So coming on Monday, we've got a very interesting show coming. There's a documentary that's been put together by our own Linda Slobodian, and it's on the terrible mess that was made with the Afghanistan evacuation and things such as that out of there. That's a whole new level of things for us going into in those sorts of productions. So we're going to talk to Linda about it, and it's going to be released on Monday. It's going to be well worth a watch. And we'll bring in Western Standard's David Craden. He writes a lot of columns for us, and they've been well received. He's got a good following. So yes, you guys have a good weekend. You should take in the Stampede or do something, enjoy it, have fun while you can. Thank you all for tuning in today, guys, and I'll see you on Monday at 11:30 a.m.